Hi, my name is Bentinho Massaro, and I've been a spiritual seeker for about 5 to 6 years. Started when I was 16, actively looking for enlightenment, the quest to find freedom from suffering. And as I was going about my own personal journey, I've always had this teacher mind, kind of. So whenever I was jumping from teaching to teaching, teacher to teacher, I was always consuming and considering what would actually work for people in general and what would not work. Um, so since that developed while I was still seeking myself, finally I've come to found what I was looking for. Kind of. I didn't actually find what I thought I was looking for, but in the failure of that search, I kind of found what I was looking for, what I was actually looking for. The freedom I was seeking that is already here. And so I started sharing this message. I started teaching online and since recently in meetings all over the world. So that's it for me.
My name is Dr. Laurie Moore, and I was around many spiritual teachers and spiritual practices for many years. And all the while, the animals were telling me, showing me, feeling through me that what I was seeking was right here in my heart. And that consciousness was occurring, and I was being used as part of consciousness, just like all beings. And finally, when I met a friend and teacher named Gangaji, I recognized that what I had been experiencing was what people were asking for, was what the mind seeks and the heart yearns for, and that it would be a wonderful opportunity to begin to share this with others and invite others into this awareness. So today I'm very grateful and honored to be speaking with Bentinho, and I'd like to start the conversation on the topic of need, which I was inquiring into the last couple of days. I was thinking about that idea of that we don't need anything, and that place where it's so obvious that anything we think we need is just a creation. It's some kind of mental or physical, emotional creation. But I wanted to go deeper inside and really experience what is need, because I had a concept of what need is. And I went into it, and I experienced it's just an essential energy that's moving through the trees, that's moving through babies, that propels evolution. And our mind can make it into something very personal, and that's real. Humanness is real, but it's also so universal and just an essential energy. And when I went deep into it, I found that it's the same as not need, that really needing and not needing are of the same source and same fabric. So I wanted to ask you what you would like to share about that.
Well, I think the typical need, the real personal need you mentioned, that most of us share is coming from this sense of inadequacy. So we personalize this, as you call it, the evolutionary impulse, maybe, the energy to move about in the world, the energy to create, to contribute. And we personalize that because that energy kind of moves through the filters of our inadequacy, our sense of inadequacy, I should say. So ever from an early age onward, we're taught that in one way or the other that we're inadequate. So this sense of inadequacy then feeds itself onto all the concepts that we learn, including spiritual teachings. Creates this distinction of student-teacher, or they got something that I don't. And that sense of inadequacy is very persistent. It is the main, if you look out in the world, you can pinpoint in everyone that is their main drive, right, for their personal desires. Pretty much everything we do, generally speaking, comes from the sense of inadequacy. We want to be fulfilled, so it's like we experience a lack, but the experience of lack is based on a thought. It's based on the assumption that we're inadequate. And upon direct investigation, or staying with it, you could say, like not fleeing into thinking, but just to stay with present experience for a moment, just to be undisturbed in this present experience, and to experience the fact that we exist, just the miracle of existing. As we kind of delve into that, as we soak in that, we find that inadequacy in all its forms, because it grows very elaborate, very, very subtle, in all its forms is really just a thought, an empty thought. And we find, like you said, that we don't actually need anything. And yet there's the movement to go about in the world. So there's the simultaneity of movement or evolution or a creative impulse, as well as the recognition that fundamentally we don't need anything, once we start seeing through that sense of inadequacy.
So we start to feel all these different impulses that come from our inadequacy, as you expressed it so well. And we begin to go after these impulses. Maybe we have an emotional impulse or a physical impulse or a mental impulse, and we start to think it's real. And then we create something from it, and we create something more from it. And then we develop these false needs where, well, I need approval, or I need someone else to tell me I'm okay, or I need to feel something. And really, when we simply just melt or dissolve into this awareness, this miracle that you speak of, that is everything, these waves, and even deeper than these waves, the stillness, everything's fulfilled. It's fulfilled itself already, and we can just watch this dream of, I think I'm this, or you think you're that, or we think we're something, and it's kind of funny.
Yeah, once you get over it, it's kind of takes a bit to get over it, but yeah, once you see the ridiculousness of it.
Yeah. You know, I've been hearing a lot in kind of spiritual and non-duality circles about how people are saying they have this fear to go into this. And I'm kind of skeptical about that. Like, well, some people do have a fear, but it almost seems like it's a popular philosophy, like, that comes from psychology. Well, we're scared and we need to overcome this fear. And I don't know. Are we really that scared? I think we like to be in love and with the universe, which is what we are. And what do you think about that?
Yeah, I would agree with you. It's overemphasized that there's this fear for... It's often the way it's languaged in teachings that creates this happy sense of I need to jump off a cliff, or I need to let go of everything. I need to lose all sense of time, or I need to lose everything in my life, or I need to stop desiring, right? So that heavy kind of distinction that are often illustrated or suggested in spiritual teachings create this strong sense of there being a one-point event in time where we need to let go of everything we know, right? But in reality, it's far more simple, it's far more direct, it's far more right here, right now. We just gradually, more and more, we start enjoying the miracle of existing. We start to recognize that we exist, rather than what we exist as, or rather than being focused on the contents of our experience. We kind of relax into experiencing. And as you say, then it's just like waves, or dreamlike phenomena appearing and disappearing, appearing and disappearing. And we can gradually fall in love with this to the degree where, you know, if you're in love with somebody, then the more in love you are with them, the less you care about the rest, right? The more I'm in love with you, the less I care about what happens to me. So it's kind of like that. The more we fall in love with this, the less we start caring about our stories of inadequacy, because we realize we no longer need them to be fulfilled. So gradually, I would say, rather than sudden for most people, it is just a gradual adjustment, a gradual, very simple shift in attention from being focused on describing and storytelling all the time to simply relaxing into present experience and enjoying the miracle of awareness, the miracle of existing, the miracle of being alive. And so it's a gradual shift where fear will arise to some degree. There will be frightening thoughts, but if we don't hold on to this one point in time kind of thing where we need to drop everything, then I don't see the reason to fear. Like you said, it's just a falling in love with. You don't actually lose anything. Your body is still here, you can still date people, you can still be with your partner, you can still play your games. Everything is still available. So it's not like everything needs to be eradicated. Right? So what's there to fear, really? You only gain. What you gain is this precious love with life as it is.
I appreciate how you acknowledge that fear can come, and that is just part of it, and that it can also be gone when we're feeling that love, like you said, this comes gradually and eternally. It goes deeper and deeper. I know for myself it feels like space gets bigger and bigger, and more of what I would have resisted before, like emotional sensations or ideas. I can't be that, or those people shouldn't be this. There's more and more room, and when I can just surrender into all of this creation that we are, what I prefer, what I don't prefer, it's really profound. It's not, there's nothing to judge. There's just a tenderness, and the heart feels sweeter. Do you have a similar experience?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So a question that people wonder about a lot, and I actually wonder in myself, is people say, well, if you're experiencing life, it's taking care of itself, because that happens more and more in this kind of awareness. It seems like impulses drive themselves, and yet we're living, we're doing things, you're out there teaching, someone else is painting, and so sometimes people ask, how does that fit? Do I just sit here until like, how does all that fit? That the fact that I'm human, that I have an ego, that I do act on my desires, that I create something with this life, how does that fit with this opening more and more and awakening into an awareness?
Well, if we take awareness as a pointer, so we recognize right now, everyone can recognize that right now, whatever we experience, we're aware of it. So whatever the experience is, whatever is contained by present perception. Perceptions is synonymous in my vocabulary with experience. So whatever present experience or present perception contains, there's always an awareness of it. So there's an awareness of experiences. And if we use this to recognize that we're already aware, then we can see that whether we have a lot of thoughts, and we have a lot of desires and impulses, and we have a lot of what we would call ego, or we have none of that, essentially so, the same awareness is aware of both states of mind. Whether you judge yourself to be full of ego, or whether you think you're enlightened and you're free from ego, those are equal states to awareness. It doesn't really matter. So in this sense, it's all inclusive from the standpoint, which is not really a standpoint, but for lack of a better word, from the standpoint of awareness, everything is included already. Everything is already rested or embraced by awareness. Every experience is already rested as being, or as being alive, or as experiencing. There's no experience without experiencing it. There's no experience outside of experiencing, or outside of awareness. There is no experience. So whatever you can conjure up, or whatever you judge about yourself being presently unenlightened, for example, or non-spiritual, thinking you need to get rid of something, if you simply relax that description, that judgment, and you relax into present experience, and you simply become more aware of the fact that you're already naturally aware, no matter what appears, no matter what goes on, then that kind of undermines or makes you see through that sense of inadequacy, which is also judging that you need to become more spiritual, you need to become more enlightened, you need to become less ego. It's just that same sense of being inadequate. And when we rest with that, when we relax into present experience again and again, just relax the mind, then naturally we see everything is already embraced, everything is already free in that sense.
There's an awareness where everything feels and is. You can see it, you can hear it, you can taste it. Everything is just this one awareness, and we're living both as the witness and the that's in that experience.